The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Third show, Dr. Rudy Kachmann speaking on this beautiful day in Fort Wayne, Indiana. This is a very important information I'm putting out to you because it affects all our lives. It may save your family, your children, your neighbors, maybe even in the world. And this is about handing you some information. And that's not the whole story. I'll also hold up other books. I encourage you to read or look at some online sites. But it's about the story of vaccines. They've saved millions of lives, and there are some people that are vaccinated and some are not vaccinated. I'm not telling you what you want to do, but you need to gather some information. I don't want you to be boom like that and say, I don't get vaccinated. Well, maybe you didn't read enough, you don't have enough information, make up your mind. So let's start on this story a little bit. About 200 years ago was the beginning of using vaccines, although in history you can go back further than that, where people were using vaccines, powders from, and what they were doing is smallpox, a disease that puts poxes on your skin and cover whole your body or only your face, was killing millions of people across the world. So there are, in Asia, India, there were some people that were taking these lesions, making powder out of them, and then putting them in your food, and people were starting to survive. That was sort of the beginning. It goes back thousands of years in history. So, and the reason that this works, if you can take, but they didn't know what viruses were at that time. They just saw a disease and reacted to it. And then and what actually happens is when you do that, you take a virus or bacteria, and it can be used live or dead or in between. The science is advancing all the time, so you have to accept the changes in the science. And like I begged you in the beginning, let's just be open-minded and gather facts and read things, look at things, and make up our own mind. So the world before that, it had epidemics, which means within the country, or pandemics across the world, that killed millions, billions of people over time, thousands of years ago. So it was nothing brand new, okay? But when vaccines came along, and they didn't come like that, and I was telling you this in the previous history, it changed the world. You can take advantage of it. I want you to understand the science of it. So you need to listen open-mindedly and maybe read some books, which I put up there for you. The average American is living 30 years longer because of his vaccines. But there are other things that you can do because the bacteria, the vaccines, they eat certain type of food, and if you cut back on that type of food, you're also less likely to become infected. So we'll look at, I'm going to show you the whole picture. We're living longer because of vaccines. So the smallpox, which was a specific disease, which was killing millions and billions across the world and caused these lesions on your skin, and then affected your bowel and your body, and you started your ability to clot blood, and many people died. That was dominating the world at that time. They called it the speckled monster because you had these speckles all over your body. And you can Google it and show me a picture of someone with smallpox, and you'll see them, and you will see them. And so let's begin the story a little bit towards the vaccine. A milkmaid, who was milking cows, named Blossom, and an 8-year-old boy had something in common. They created the first vaccine for smallpox in 1796, a long time ago. And no cure for smallpox, but now we have the vaccine. Get the shot and you don't get it. And so research and innovation were leading the fight. They were gaining knowledge, it was advancing, things were being tried. Look at the lives. If you think vaccines don't help people, just look at the lives saved fighting COVID-19, the last big pandemic that we had. So there are increased rates of deaths among the unvaccinated. And our country, maybe 70%, some areas less are vaccinated, 30% unvaccinated. We have such a thing, and this is interesting, as herd immunity. If a certain percentage of people get vaccinated, the virus, the bacteria are destroyed, and the unvaccinated survive too. But it's different for different viruses, and some illnesses. 96% of the people need to be vaccinated to save the 4%'s lives. Yeah, so it's different. So, and that's what's called herd immunity. Our herd immunity is different for different bacteria, for different viruses. The reason that people don't get vaccinated a lot of times is the religious beliefs. They don't know the facts. They don't have insurance. They have a lack of knowledge. There are many different reasons, and I'll go through those a little bit. And but the side effects of vaccines are much less. And you can look up what they are for each specific vaccine. Even if you go to one of the pharmaceutical companies or your doctor and they vaccinate it, tell them what are the side effects of this, what are the odds of me getting a virus or bacterial infection, which can lead to terrible disability. It can result in death, yes. And if you don't get vaccinated, your neighbor, your kids, your mother, your father, they could die because you didn't get vaccinated, yes. So gather this information, and Rudy's good news is that our knowledge is constantly changing, and we need to advance our thinking along with it. Now, they used to have to run studies 10, 20, 30 years long before they would approve a vaccine. But now, the new scientific advances, they can, just a few months, they can develop a vaccine. Yeah, it's that quick. So the future is looking better, but we must pay attention and take advantage of it, okay? So we need to build up our antibodies. The antibodies are proteins that injure the virus or kill it so it can't duplicate anymore. And let's go through the science a little bit. Viruses, we didn't know about them for a long time because they were so small. They could not be seen with a routine microscope. We had to invent the electron microscope. We can magnify things that are bigger, and bang, there they were. there were scientists and doctors who suspected they were there, but they finally saw them. Candace Pert is one who worked with them a great deal at NIH, the only woman that's working there. So I read a lot of her literature, and I met her one time, actually, although they had seen them before that as the electron microscope was being developed. Bacteria are much larger, but they're still very small, but they are larger, easier to see. So our gut, our bacteria and viruses that live in our gut system carry in them a lot of viruses and bacteria. You get trillions of bacteria in your gut. You get more trillions in viruses there now, but you got to have friendly ones. And what you feed them is extremely important. You're much more likely to develop a viral infection if you feed them a lot of sugar, because of, let me tell you about the physiology of viruses a little bit. You won't believe this. Viruses exist, and they're called virons. Virons, when they're like that. They're a non-living thing. They can live like that for decades, maybe even a century, as long as they don't get food. So they're not alive, they're dead. But once the virons develop the ability to enter a cell, which makes energy, it steals the sugar and the fatty acids and develops energy and starts multiplying, and then busts out again and can spread through the world. Can spread throughout your body. So viruses actually are a non-living thing versus bacteria, which have a metabolic system. But still, if you feed the bacteria and you got, for example, a different kind of food, non-sugary food, there are going to be different types of bacteria in there, healthy versus sick. Isn't that interesting? So when a foreign substance enters the body, we develop antibody to it. We're fighting it to protect us, and that's called immunity, okay? A mother, for example, passes immunity to a baby. The baby goes out through the uterus and the cervix and the vagina, and its face is covered with the bacteria of the mother, and they enter the child's gut, and it protects the child for a period of time. If a woman gets a C-section, I think a lot of times they don't properly inform them. The gut of the child from C-section does not have these viruses and bacteria in, the good ones, the good ones, and they're more likely to develop an infection. A lot of people didn't know that before they do a C-section and make a bunch of money. They probably don't discuss that in great detail because it has significance. So babies born of a C-section are more likely to get infections. So, and breast milk does the same thing. Milk output by the mother is a different kind of a fat, omega-3 fat, a good fat, and the child has some immunity from breast milk. Isn't that interesting? So passive immunity is mother to baby, breast milk, or a natural birth. So vaccines introduce some immunity into the system to disease. And the way it's done is it can be a dead virus or a attenuated, partial dead virus, or a piece of the virus. As science is constantly advancing, which is wonderful. Most childhood vaccinations are completed between birth and age 6. Yeah, some shots are given immediately the child is born to protect them. but some you have to inject more than once, so some combination, and you get a booster a year later. You have to accept them, otherwise, if you do not, they may not let you into the school system. For one thing, they do have national laws, but the other thing, you're exposing your child to be attacked by a virus or bacteria that may kill them. Mm-hmm. That may spread to a neighbor's kid and kill them, or spread to the town or the school or the world, and that has happened in the past, okay? Vaccines do have some side effects, but they're less and less because the science is advancing. But the side effects are much less than the disease. We're talking about thousands, tens of thousands to one. And vaccines have saved the world. Billions have died from the diseases we spoke about. So don't be closed-minded. Learn the history. Read the books. Here's a great book to read, and I'm going to hold out a few of them. And End of Epidemics by Jonathan Quick, and it is one I'll be referring to. That goes through history a lot. So I think to be informed. Here's another one I have laying right here, The Deadliest Enemy, A War Against Killer Germs. By germs, I mean bacteria and viruses. A very complete history, because viruses, epidemics, and pandemics are going to happen, absolutely. They occur every few years or decades, and like the 1918 flu epidemic. Remember, we get the flu every year. Occasionally there's a little genetic change, and we have not been vaccinated for it, and it could quickly spread and kill millions of people. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. So learn the science. Be updated. If you're not vaccinated, I know someone that just took a trip throughout many countries where people are not as highly vaccinated. And I hope she comes back alive. She's not vaccinated, so viruses are living there. Are they going to get them? I hope not. I pray that nothing happens. So they may kill your loved ones, the world, your neighbors, your church by not vaccinating. Some people have religious beliefs, don't get vaccinated, and they have had a much higher disability and death rate. Yes, look it up. Certain religions don't believe in vaccination. I'm for religion, but I'm not for a religion that's going to kill my family or the world. Come on. So vaccines can be dead viruses, dead bacteria, or weakened ones, and still be used for vaccination. They study those, and they gather the information. Now it's getting to a point they can use a small part of a virus, even a dead virus, and you can have it, because viruses are not a complete cell. So they're made from DNA or RNA, but they don't have a metabolic system. Remember I told you that? Viruses get into the cell to grow a little bigger and to duplicate. And some vaccines you take and you don't feel good and you're tired for a little while, and that's your immunity attacking your injection, and that may last a few days, okay? Remember the sparkle monster, the smallpox with the lesions all over your body, it was one of the world's deadliest diseases, and sometimes it threatened and wiped out whole populations. Yes. So that you can learn a way to vaccinate yourself, not to be exposed to that, because some of those are still around. In the 1500s, reading accounts from Asia where they had a new method. Remember, he had smallpox, and they took scabs from people who had the smallpox pustules, crushed them into a powder, and used to infect healthy people, and no disease. So that was sort of the beginning of vaccination that occurred in Asia, and it's in history. Wonderful thing to read in these books here. So that information slowly worked its way to Europe, but Europe in the 1700s, about 400,000 people died each year, from smallpox. Just think of it. It was nicknamed the sparked monster, the speckled monster. See the point? Can you visualize it? And survivors who took this powder, which they put in food, had scarring all over their body, but they lived. Okay? So in 1798, Jenner in England, who had been studying this in cows, remember we spoke about the milkmaid, and he published his findings on smallpox vaccination in a booklet, and incidentally, the Latin word for cow is vaxa. That's where the word vaccine came from. Yeah, because, so that was really the first official vaccination with some studies. But remember, it goes way back in Asia where they did parts of that also, okay? So, and the first laboratory-developed vaccine was 1879 by Louis Pasteur of France when he was studying cholera, and he was studying it in chickens. So he started developing a vaccine too. In 1940s, polio, which we've all heard about, and is more recent for us, it was paralyzing 35,000 people a year in the U.S. Interesting enough, that was at a time that I was going to medical school, and I needed to make some money, pay my way through with it, but thank God for my parents who helped. And I was vaccinated for it, but my side job at IU, when I think back about it, my job was to help people who were on ventilators. They couldn't breathe. They were paralyzed. Their respiratory system was paralyzed, and maybe their arms and legs were paralyzed. Some had tracheostomies, and they were on breathing machines, and I sucked out the fluid, and I didn't know enough about vaccines and vaccination, and be honest with you, I don't clearly remember whether I was vaccinated. I suspect I was. They would not have let me in the room. But I went through that history. In 1952, a Dr. Salk used inactivated dead viruses and distributed them, about 450 million doses, and what he used was live viruses, yes, and that literally eliminated the polio disease. And a reporter asked him what kind of money he was making because of that, and his answer was, would you pattern the sun? He made no money from that whatsoever. Interesting. And then I'll tell a little bit of a story of a Dr. Maurice Hilleman. He developed the science for 40 illnesses, 40 vaccines. And he also discovered that you could combine the injection and attack a number of diseases at the same time. Yes, and like measles, mumps, rubella, and in measles you get a fever and rashes, can kill children. Mumps, the salivating glands, and they swell painfully, can choke you off, you can die. Rubella, dangerous to pregnant females especially, other people too, can cause deafness, blindness, other disabilities, but they combined them in the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, as one shot. So let me tell you something about the story of Maurice Hilleman, because it's interesting. For one thing that I liked, Maurice Hilleman, and that story is described in many of these books I have in front of me. He developed 40 vaccine, and he was born in Montana, a German like me originally. I'm American, but I was born of German parents. Okay, and he really was interested in saving children's lives, especially because a lot of these viruses attack children. But many people didn't get vaccinated. I mean, he recommended 40 different vaccines. Can you imagine the number of people's lives that he saved? But many people didn't get vaccinated. Some couldn't afford it, okay? Others didn't think they were necessary. Some people today still think they're not necessary. I do wonder in this town, how many people are get vaccinated? Does public health in our town step up and tell us? No. What about the kids in the schools? Kids are going to schools. They feed them a sugary diet. Look online today. If you read the food, they're giving children cinnamon buns, orange juice, a highly sugary diet. And what do viruses live on? Sugar. Yes, that is what they love the most, and they multiply the fastest. So, and then anti-vaccine religions and beliefs developed. Like I said, some couldn't afford it, some didn't have the knowledge, some races more likely to catch it because they're eating high rate of diabetes with high sugar levels. So they're vaccinating for the virus, but I would like to push also many more people actually are dying of the complications of diabetes, not just the virus, heart disease, lung disease, dementia, amputations, dislocations. You name disease after the disease. So we should be attacking the vaccination rate and the diabetes problem at the same time. Sugar is a booger and a hooker. We need to teach the kids in the schools that. In Japan, they do, actually. They have a very low rate of obesity and diabetes and less viral infections because they teach the kids in the schools, and then they bring the parents in to teach the parents. That's what we need to do. We need to attack both problems in education on infections, viral bacterial infections, and diabetes, the food of these bacteria and viruses. At the same time, our illness rate, death rate would go down big time. I know the science. Talk to me about it. I'll even tell you what books to read. Sorry for being a little dramatic, but saving a life, I think, is pretty important. Why am I doing this? No one's paying me. I'm doing this because I'm a doctor, and I care about that you're alive without disability and live to be 100. So you can play pickleball or tap dance with me. It's true, though. I do those things. And the 1918, we had the flu epidemic that killed millions upon millions, the largest epidemic ever. So what happens is that these viruses and bacteria, their genetic structure changes a little bit, and the vaccine didn't work. And that's a problem now. We get the flu every year, and 20 to 50,000 people die, depending on which year we're talking about, every year. So, and if there's a certain amount of change in genetic structure, we could have a world pandemic. So, to be vigilant, and I would mention to you things that can be done. So, in December of 2020, the drug company Pfizer and the drug company Moderna developed a new vaccine for COVID-19, okay? Incidentally, the word virus means poison. Remember? Yeah. And remember, vaccination comes from the word cow. So the word virus means, and it's a Latin word for poison, okay? So, and I already told you the story that viruses straddle, that they don't have a metabolic system, so they're not alive till they get inside of a cell, and if it has more sugar and fatty acids, they're more likely to multiply, and diabetics have a much higher rate of bad fatty acids and sugar in them. You're more likely to become infected. In New York City, 80% of the people that became infected were diabetics. Mm-hmm. But they didn't concentrate on that, which I think they should. Viruses live in two states. So they can be dead as soon as they have food, they can be alive. I'm alive. So they're called virions when they're not alive, okay? And viruses have in them RNA, which is the expression of your DNA in your cell. They can have either one. In the 1930s, the electron microscope came along, and we saw them, which led to eradication of viruses, which really led to a lot of information. It had killed, the pox had killed 400 million people in the 20th century, 4 times greater than all the wars combined. Yes. And 10 to 12% of cancers are caused by viruses. Yes, don't get the virus, don't get the cancer. You see how important that is? So vaccination reduces cancer rate. Not having diabetes reduces cancer rate, because remember, the diabetes have in them. So in 1880s, Robert Koch, K-O-C-H, and Louis Pasteur, Koch lived till 1910, and Pasteur, 1899, developed the germ theory of disease. And antibiotics kill the bacteria, and they worked out the metabolism of the viruses. And what are things we can do? Ensure timely and accurate communication, that our leaders communicate to us directly. Our president, for example, the leader, our mayor, for example, could be leading our education in not developing diabetes. And when I look at the school lunches, look up school lunch, Allen County. Look it up. What are they feeding our kids? A diet that'll make children sugar addicts. Yes. Just look at the foods on the list. I've looked down them, and this is occurring in many cities. Some people are changing. New York is changing. Chicago is changing. So, and every new invention, like the new vaccine development, which is, we can now develop a vaccine in about 10 months when it used to take years. So we need to pay attention to that. We need to spend wisely, prevent disease before an epidemic strikes. Change what we're feeding our children, educate the children, educate the parents who are feeding the children like they do in Japan. Japan runs a overweight rate of about 5%. Yeah, U.S. maybe 80%. Look it up. Look around. Look around. I'm not being critical, but we need to gather information. Gathering information caused me to change. I never was that overweight, but now I'm 88. Play pickleball, tap dance, take a walk, maybe even sing some songs. No illness, no pills, nothing. And it's based 90% on knowledge that I have gained in the last 20 years. I've been speaking like this probably for 30 years. Yes, yes. I would take advantage of it. You can go to Amazon, Apple, any of those stations, and say Rudy Kachmann, RUDYKACHMANN, and 1,000 TV shows will show up. Many on diabetes, many on other things like school lunches or today's vaccination. So you gain knowledge, and then here we have to thank Dale Carnegie who provided this library and this library itself, that they allow these TV shows, and then it goes to these TV shows go to YouTube. And the nation of India contacted me 6 months ago. There's so much diabetes there. They're using my shows on diabetes to attack their disease. Yeah, they before that. You now have developed processed food in India, and there's tremendous amount of diabetes. So, and mobilize citizen activism, get helpers. I constantly try to get people to work with me, and I do. Some respond, but I've made an appointment to see the head of the school system, who is feeding these kids these meals that cause them to be sugar addicts, has not given me time to speak to them. Maybe it'll happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So the bubonic plague, the Black Plague, was about 600 years ago, and it killed 50 million lives, 50% in Europe and Asia and Africa. It came from, and so they are viruses, bacteria continue to be a gigantic threat, much bigger threat. You know, we spend so much time in the Defense Department in fighting ISIS and Russia and China. It pales in the death rate compared to what viruses and bacteria can do to us. It pales, but the last epidemic we were not prepared, and I hope we are preparing for this next one. Bill Gates, you know, Microsoft, Bill Gates. He said we could spend $1 trillion yearly on epidemics. What do you think it would do to our economy? Rudy says we'll spend trillions on the complications of diabetes, even more than on the virus. So I say to you, attack the diabetes epidemic and the viral and bacterial epidemic, and it will save us billions, keep a lot of people alive, decrease tremendous suffering. And I remind you again, viruses, bacteria, they're sugar eaters. They're sugar eaters. Take the food away, and there won't be as many living. So there is a book written, which I have up there for you, called Hope from the Power of Seven, okay? So lead like the house is on fire. I mean, the viruses, pandemics are going to come. We must act now. Are they going to come next year? Who knows? There have been 3 epidemics since 1918, big ones, pandemics. So we need a strong public health system. Let me ask you something. Can you name the head of public health, Allen County? I bet you $1,000 you can't do it. It would be rare. So they need to get on TV. They need to have pamphlets that people understand that. I don't blame the public. I'm just gathering information for you. That's the reason I want you to do some more reading. Just don't listen to me. And and we need to attack the school lunch system. We're creating sugar addicts, and the virus love to eat sugar. You want to make your kids sick? Feed them the school lunch. But some kids can't afford a different lunch. That's their breakfast. That's their lunch. In New York City, they have a free breakfast, free lunch, free dinner, and then Eric Adams, the mayor, wrote a book on a plant-based diet. Well, that's better. That's good, but to be honest with you, you got to eat more than plants because B12 is not made by plants. So you need to look at, gather the science. Encourage you to read his book. I love Mayor Adams. He was a diabetic going blind, and he got over his diabetes, but just with the plant-based diets, with all the lectins and pectins and oxalates that are in plants, that science needs to be explained. But at least he's doing something, okay? I encourage you to read his book. We need to have active prevention being carried out. Some people are doing it. Constant readiness, but it's not going on. Our city is exploding with good economists. We thank the last mayor for doing that. But I remind you that he was not a very healthy guy, and I went with my books to him to get him to lead the community in good health. I gave him the books, but he died. You saw in the paper. He was not a leader in the health aspect, but we can't do everything, I understand. But I was there knocking on his door. I laid the books on his desk to prevent diabetes. He did nothing. Neighborhood health clinic. Every child going there is essentially a diabetic. I know, I've been there. And they giving them milk for breakfast. That's because all the lobbyists, all the milk companies, the milk is full of hormones. When the little baby cow is born, they inject it with a growth hormone. And then they put it in a cage, and they give it hormones and pesticides and herbicides to increase the production of milk, and then you give it to your kid. Does that make sense to you? No, it doesn't make any sense. So I went over there to try to get them to change, but they get so much money from the milk industry, from the agricultural industry, which is bribing the congressman, and give them the great, about $30 billion a year goes to corn, which is full of fructose that goes to the liver and affects the organs in your body. So I spoke earlier to you about herd immunity, where a certain percentage of people need to be vaccinated, so the other remaining, whatever percentage is, but if 30% is the average in this city and in the country, and some countries can't afford any vaccines at all. And they're not that expensive. We could help spread them through the UN, World Health Organization. We could spread them to the world. We need to attack the whole world, get them vaccinated, and then wipe out diseases. So we need rabbit testing. If you've never been tested, for example, let me tell you something about diabetes. 30% of people get type 2 diabetes, and all those diseases are thin. 80% of the overweight are diabetic. Many will say to you, well, I'm not diabetic. Many of them are, though. Serum insulin testing is the secret. Serum insulin goes up 10 to 15 years before the blood sugar goes up, but your changes occurring in your body already when the insulin is up and your sugar is normal. They found that out by doing autopsies on soldiers that are normal weight that died in the Vietnam, Korean, wars. The autopsy found no disease in the Koreans and the Vietnamese, but the Americans were full of vascular disease, although they had no symptoms. Yes, yes. Correct testing. You are what your tests are, not just the way you look. Okay? All right? I'm 135 pounds, but I've been tested. I had my test run. I can gladly show them to you if you want to see them. I think I posted them online. So investing wisely saves lives. It needs to, though, be an international effort, because if we have one country where people are dying from diabetes, viral disease, and bacterial disease, it'll spread to all of us because we're traveling on planes and trains, and we can spread it from one country to the next. That's real easy, and that's happened. So why some people reject getting COVID vaccines? Remember, I said 30% of the people in this country are not vaccinated. Some sections of certain cities where there are certain religions, dialects, and beliefs, even the rate is higher. Many don't have a doctor, so it is an issue of inequality. Poor people are less likely not to get vaccinated. Certain racial groups are less likely to get vaccinated. We need to test them properly. Vaccines should be free. Should be free, and some are. So, but many people buy into false information. My experience, many well-to-do, yes, I know I have some friends that are well-to-do, run factories, well-known, very rich people, but they've been brainwashed. And sometimes it involves politics and vaccines together. So I know some. Of the vaccinated, 71% of the vaccinated trusted the hospitals and their doctor. 39% of the non-vaccinated did not, but many couldn't afford the doctor. So we should send them for evaluation, maybe for free. There was a lady in Philadelphia, another way to convince people. She was sitting in people's homes and talking to them, and in the homes of some religious group. Yeah, so she went in there. So that was a lady that eventually formed huge groups and taught these people how to get rid of their diabetes and how not to become infected. And she went into the churches. She hired buses. They formed an organization, a bunch of volunteers. Some were paid, and they were supported by some companies. And she saved a lot of lives. She saved a lot of lives. And you know, when Columbus came to this country first, and he brought viruses with him. Didn't know about viruses then. The natives caught them, and the beautiful natives on some of these islands were totally killed. And when you look at the descriptions and read about them, they were the most beautiful people in the world because they were eating food from nature, not processed food. They were unbelievable beauty. Totally killed them. For example, when Cortez, with only 400 men, entered in Mexico, and he infected the Aztecs with the virus and conquered about 2 million soldiers he was facing. Same darn thing. And I'm just describing the development in the science. So again, lessons learned or not, we need surveillance. And it needs to be active. We need to know what's going on and then speak up. What is the rate of infections in different counties, cities, and districts? And you see some states where 80% of the people are vaccinated, but a small group and they live in a certain count and of a certain religion, not vaccinated at all, and they're the ones dying. I don't accept that. This is not an anti-religious statement. It's information. is information. So my opinion, number one is we need to vaccinate everybody in the country. No religious exemption. This is public health. Because if you don't get vaccinated, you can affect my family. Even if you've been vaccinated, you can still catch the virus from somebody else and still be affected. Especially the influenza virus keeps on changing itself a little bit. And that's the reason we need to get tested for it and vaccinated for the influenza virus every year. It keeps on changing a little bit. And one day it'll change and we'll have a pandemic. It's a matter of, we're going to get a pandemic. You're much less likely to catch it, though, even if it's a pandemic, if you're metabolically healthy, meaning you don't have type 2 diabetes, which you can get rid of 5 weeks. Look at my websites. I'll show you how to do it. And so we need to declare war on diabetes, yes. And we need to declare war on the viruses and bacteria, yes. We'll probably eliminate 75% of the causes of death in this nation. And we'll get rid of all these chronic diseases and the viral diseases. Here's another lesson. They have in this country announced Operation Warp Speed, where you really speed things up and get this information to the whole world. And for countries that can afford the vaccines, we need to, because they're very cheap to manufacture, we all need to chip in a little bit, maybe have a world tax, 0.5%, we all pay into it, and viruses will be eliminated, okay? So a third of the world has no vaccine in 2023. No one is safe, really, till we all are safe. Remember, I mentioned the word Maurice Hilleman, who performed experimental critical to the development of measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis A and B. He has saved millions of lives, millions of lives. His father, a great man too, wanted him to be a minister, but Maurice was more oriented to science, and he developed vaccines for chickenpox. Since 1990 into the 21st century, his vaccines and science have been at the center of controversy because of anti-vax people, Joe Lieberman, John Kerry, Robert Kennedy, who's still at work. And read his book. Again, information. I've read all these books. And I love the Kennedy family, but even they say negative statements about Robert in his book, and they're trying to undo much of which Maurice Hilleman has accomplished. So we need to get the public health process which is underfunded now. It's been underfunded as part of the reason. That's no excuse. If you're a leader, no one's funding me. No one sends me a dime to do what I do. So as the head of public health sitting next to me, which I invited them to be here, public health wants to attend my lectures. I'll sit you right at my table, and you can speak freely your opinion, but be prepared. There's 2,000 books in my basement. You know what the good news is, though? The good news is that Wesleyan University, because I moved to the downtown Fort Wayne, they get 80% of my health books. They're putting in a library in one room in there, which will be nothing but the diabetes center with a health screen where they can pull in the YouTube shows. They are going to lead the area in diabetes and viral bacterial prevention and reversal. Thank you, Wesleyan University. They get it, but we keep on pushing. I'm pushing. And so progress is occurring. People walk up to me, and I'm not looking for credit, I'm looking for a change. They'll walk up to me and say, Dr. Rudy, I lost 30 pounds. My diabetes is gone. That happened to me recently walking through the downtown here. It happens to me almost every day. And I'm not looking for fame. I'm looking out to get rid of disease. And then I hear close to me where I'm living now, they're developing this huge music center, which we have to credit Chuck Sirach for, instead of taking money from Sweetwater, which he could have moved somewhere else. He's staying in Fort Wayne, investing it, and there will be music there. Music is positive thinking. We're less likely to read bad food when we're dancing and thinking, or maybe they want to tap dance with me. Who knows? But the city is changing, so that will be the health paradigm, and I'm working on that. I'm talking to the head of the hospital systems to see if they'll change, and I think they are listening. And so don't, but don't ignore the power of anti-vaccine people. Okay, some don't, and realize too, some people don't have a good immune response, even if you vaccinate them. The ones with anorexia, whose immunity has been destroyed, some with cancer, they have no immunity. So you vaccinate them, they'll still get attacked by the viruses because their immunity, they may have cancer from one of the immune cells. And pay attention to vaccine advisory committees, but listen with an open mind. Some of them represent pharmaceutical companies, and you must realize, are they getting paid by somebody else? I'm telling you, I'm not getting paid by anybody. But some of the people that you listen to are actually paid by pharmacy companies. Some don't have a doctor. They don't get vaccinated, okay? The Kaiser Foundation found that lack of health insurance is the biggest reason, and vaccination should be free. Maybe we need a healthcare system where everybody can go see a doctor. But again, that could result in people, I'm not going well, I don't have any money to pay, so I get sick. So that may not be motivating either. So we're looking for the answer. The more likely to get sick elderly, probably because the immunity is down a little bit. And what's the best way to deal with it? Like I said, this doctor that we spoke about, she went into the homes of people and talked to them, and her name was Alice Stanford, Germantown section of Philadelphia, a black lady. She went into the black neighborhoods and taught them and developed, and she attacked the diabetes and the viral thing. She went to church parking lots, then developed a group, and she had 70 employees, 200 volunteers, all funded by Stanford. She had a bus that vaccinated 4,000 people in 24 hours. In May 2021, 46,000 Philadelphia were vaccinated, all because of her. So individual people speaking up. So what I'm saying here is trying to get some information to you about vaccines, and also what feeds the viruses and bacteria. And I'd like you to read some about them. Here's another book, The Vaccine. It has vaccines. It has pictorials in it by Paige Polinsky. It has pictures, which are helpful. Another book is Vaccinated by Paul A. Offit, an excellent book. And he originally, he changed his mind about what causes these infections. And then the last one, Jonathan Howard, when a book called We Want Them Infected originally, they thought we couldn't achieve herd immunity, so we didn't want people to get vaccinated to get the infection, but many would die. So I don't think that's the answer either. So read my books, look at the YouTube shows. I'm doing this because I love you. I want you to play pickleball with me. Thank you for listening. And this is just the beginning of your information about these diseases which can be avoided. I love you. Enjoy doing this for you.